Hey guys, my name is Jonathan Reich. I'm a licensed CPA in the state of Louisiana, but I'm not your licensed CPA. So take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt. Just keep that in mind. These are just my opinions for me, by me. So as a CPA, guys, I find myself helping people through all walks of life, starting businesses, selling businesses, how to run their business, how to keep more money. And sometimes I get a peek into people's personal financial matters, probably more often than most. And so I have a lot of experience in helping advise people on some of the best ways you can keep, save, and store your money. I guess you could say. And if you're using like a traditional bank or something like that, you're probably getting eaten alive by interest rates. And so, like, I've got a bank that I use for all my equipment, my mortgage, my business. A lot of my clients get pushed to them, but like their savings and money market account is like a 0.5% APR, and right now you can get out to 4 to 5, maybe even 5.5%, if you shop around and do some of the things that we're going to talk about. But if you're not shopping around and you're just letting your money, $50,000, $25,000, sit in a savings account and a checking account, whether it be your business or personal household funds, you're getting eaten alive by interest. Inflation, or I'm sorry, eaten alive by inflation. Interest is what we want. Inflation is kind of what we don't want. And with inflation being around 2 to 3% per year, your buying power is going to quickly diminish. However, if you're able to find a good bank using a tool online, maybe you'll be able to save your money and keep your purchasing power strong. And so that's what I want to talk about today is how can we find those banks. And so there's some different tools out there that I want to walk through. These are basically online banking comparison sites. You've got your big ones like NerdWallet, Bankrate, the Motley Fool, Forbes Advisor. I want to talk about some of the ones that I've seen that I've put to work that I would recommend my clients to use, why I would recommend to use them, what situations, what scenarios, and kind of who I think ends up on top. So let's go ahead and jump in now that I've kind of given you the whole rigmarole. So the first one I want to talk about is already on my screen. It is bestmoney.com. So I like this because they give you financial clarity without a ton of clutter. And so you can see here on their homepage, what are you looking for? What is your goal? So, like today's topic, we're going to be talking about online banking, checking, savings, or business checking. We'll jump right in. In my opinion, Best Money has a pretty unique space in the comparison market because they really focus on simplicity. A lot of these other folks that, and we'll see this in a second, a lot of these other folks, they just have so much clutter, like it's easy to get lost in the fray. And so I like that I can click on, okay, I need to find some online banking. Here it is. It's a list. Now, guys, keep in mind a lot of this is going to be sponsored. It's going to be advertisements, but it gives you the facts up front. This is exactly what I'm looking for. A couple bullet points. We don't need a ton of different, like just 20 or 50 different banks out here. And so that's for online banking. If I want to go check out maybe savings accounts, we have the same deal, that same layout with a lot of banks that a lot of us are familiar with, like SoFi and American Express, E-Trade, with the different ratings and whatnot. And you can see their APR here, which is really what I'm after. I want to make sure that if I have my money sitting in an account, that it's not getting ate up by inflation, and that, if I've got $25,000 in my account a year from now, I should still be able to purchase $25,000 worth of goods, because now maybe due to the fact I have 4% APR, it's 26,000, and that interest compounds, and away we go. So let's talk about the pros and cons. So the pros are the user interface. It's extremely clean. It's easy to navigate. I don't need a degree in finance to use it. A degree always helps if you're in finance and you're looking at money, but you don't have to have one. So also their partners that they have listed here, they're big name brand folks. They're not like these flash in the pan banks that have really high rates but terrible customer service and then seem to disappear, or even worse, you can't get a hold of and your money's locked up. Not that that happens. Most banks are going to be FDIC insured if they're legitimate businesses, but just don't lock your money up with some bank you've never heard of that's based out of some Eastern Asian company because they promise you 8%. It's just not going to happen. And then the other thing is the speed. So, you can click on an application here on my screen for SoFi, jump right in, and you can search and fill out an application. If you want to open up a bank account, it's pretty quick. So there's the pros. I really like Best Money. I think they've got a clean interface. I wouldn't mind using them. And I try and steer folks who say, hey, I need to be able to find a good bank. Here's what I'm looking for. Say, okay, go to BestMoney, filter it down, pick who you like. You know, it's like picking a car. Pick the one that you want the most, right? The only drawback that I've found is there's less educational content on this platform. So if you're looking for like a 2,000 word essay on the Federal Reserve or or something like that, like we're gonna get to with Investopedia, maybe NerdWallet, it's gonna be elsewhere. But overall, not a ton of drawbacks to this platform. The next one I want to talk about is like talking about you can't talk about personal finance without talking about NerdWallet. So NerdWallet does a really good job of explaining everything. It's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. It's the same thing as if we were talking about accounting software. I'd have to mention QuickBooks. If we're talking about personal finance and how to find online banking, anything budget, personal finance, money related, NerdWallet's going to have. And so that's definitely the pro for this platform. They have a massive number of institutions. They have small credit unions, these obscure banks out of Wyoming and Virginia who maybe can just give you the best rate around because they're trying to raise funds, whatever. NerdWallet has access to all of that. You can see that here whenever you talk about, okay, I want to look at checking accounts, CDs, whatever. They have different bank reviews. I mean, just a ton of different tabs and tabs. And so once again, you can go right here. Here's your APY. Here's what you get for your bonus. Here's your the type of customer service you can expect. Rating out of 5. NerdWallet's going to have it all. One thing that I think sets NerdWallet apart from some of these other folks is they have really educational content. So if you're not just shopping rates like this, if you actually want to learn a little bit more, you can continue to drill in and look at reviews, or it'll talk about why this is a good bank or why it's not a good bank. Like right here, just in the header, here's an essay. You can just click read more and it'll just educate you. And I like that. I think an informed client, someone who knows what's going on, who understands the process, that's always going to be better for them and therefore for me, the end. Keep in mind, guys, I'm not a CFP or a CFA, just a CPA. I just, have a lot of dabbling with stuff like this. So, this is not financial advice or anything of that nature, but it's a good way to kind of explore your options. I also like that you can really filter down the different options here in NerdWallet. So if you want very specific search criteria, you can do that. Some of the cons are going to be the information overload. I mean, you can see here you got a ton of different headers with tons of different things underneath those headers. So it's easy to get distracted, especially by products that are being pushed to you. And then it's just cluttered and it can feel busy. So don't get lost for the fray. Make sure you know what you're after and you'll be fine. NerdWallet's a good one. The next one I want to talk about is Bankrate. Bankrate is older than I am. They've been around since things like this were still in print. And so they're a household name. Some of the pros of using Bankrate are they show trends more so than some of the other folks. So you can track and see as APYs are rising and dropping, or if they're staying the same, flat. And so that's really nice data to have if you want to make a decision on, hey, they're showing increasing APY here. Maybe I want to start talking to these folks and see what it might be a couple months from now when I'm ready to lock up my money. Okay, good deal. Bankrate's a great tool for that. They also have really good, strong calculators for like compounding interest. Sometimes I use their calculators if I'm like just doing day-to-day work at my desk. I'm like, okay, I need to figure out compounding interest on a 30-year mortgage at 5.5% at $280,000 principal. Bankrate has a good calculator for stuff like that. And then they have a lot of volume that's pushed through their platform, so they know a lot. And they have tons of data, which means a lot of their stuff is going to be extremely accurate. They're going to have name brand banks. They're going to have everything that you would expect from a behemoth such as this institution. Some of the cons are, I feel like a lot of the interface is crowded with sponsored placements, ads, if you will. Sponsored placements do the same thing because they get affiliation money and stuff like that. So be on the lookout for that. Just make sure that you're not clicking on the top spot because Capital One paid Bankrate the most money. That's not what we're after. We're after good APY. We're after good customer service with a good trustworthy bank. And these are the tools that are going to help you find that. And then a lot of people may find Bankrate kind of dry because it's a tool for numbers people. That's folks like me. If numbers make your eyes roll to the back of your head, well, you may want to try somewhere else. But for me, it's perfect. I don't need that human touch. Give me the data. Let me plug in my own, and then away we go. The next one I want to talk about is the Forbes Advisor. So they're a little bit newer. I appreciate them because they have a quality over quantity approach, and you can see that here with some of that data that they're pushing here. Like I'll give you a great example. I'm a little biased here, but I use Monarch myself for my personal budgeting. It's right here, number one. Did not know it was going to be there, but I have found Monarch to be a really good platform, and the fact that it's right here on the number one spot, well, that checks out to me. And so they have a lot of quality over quantity. They feel less like a database and more like a recommendation engine for what everyone else is using and what they're enjoying. But they can have a slower to update list. They may not be like the real time feeds like some of these other platforms. So keep that in mind. And we are in a volatile rate environment. So if you're shopping rates all the time, you may want to look at some of these other platforms. The qualitative analysis that they do, they judge the experience of using the bank, not just the rate. So, like I said, want good customer service in addition to that excellent rate. They have really high editorial standards, and so you rarely see like junk products. Like I'm familiar with the first three things here, and that just shows to me that they're actually looking for things that people are going to want to use. And then their articles are really well written, in my opinion. So some of the cons are they are a little slower to update, like I just mentioned, and then they focus on like really top tier players, and so that quality over quantity can also be a drawback if you're missing a great offer from like a small bank that Forbes Advisor may not have picked up on. So you know you have to take it hand in hand in order to make sure that you're not missing anything like that. So that quality over quantity, very narrow, very focused scope. Keep that in mind. The next to last one I want to talk about today is the Motley Fool Money. And so I have mixed feelings about this one. I wanted to include it anyway because Motley Fool often pushes stock recommendations and things like that. And so I would never recommend someone buy a stock. That just seems like a slippery slope, especially for a CPA who wants to serve the public. So, but I wanted to include them because their personal finance wing kind of carries that same DNA. Their banking comparison tools are designed for folks who view their bank account as part of like a larger investment strategy. So once again, hedging inflation, things like that. They don't really review like every bank in America, like NerdWallet, for instance. They are like closer to the Forbes Advisor. They have a tight list of high performers that they want to include in their structures, and then they'll talk about if the APY is insulting or if it's generous, and let you make your own decisions. So the pros of the Motley Fool Money, they don't hedge their bets. They tell you what they like and they dislike. The end. They connect banking choices to the broader financial portfolio picture. So, in addition to talking about where you're keeping your money, maybe where you're keeping your 401k. Is it Vanguard? Is it Fidelity? Is it E-Trade? Where are you investing in? Stuff like that. So it's a little bit more holistic approach, in my opinion. And then they have a reputation. It's definitely a known reputation. I'm not going to say it's a strong reputation or if it's independent. I struggle to have an answer for that just because if someone's pushing something to be bought, that doesn't sit well with me. It's like, what's the ulterior motive? So keep that in mind. Take that one with, a pound of salt. But I wanted to include them. Some of the cons of using them are they have a smaller database, so you're not going to find all these different banks out there. And then there's less customization. So like if you really want to filter down for things, create comparison tables for like a specific deposit amount, it's just not going to happen. So the last one I want to talk about is kind of a catch-all. So this is Investopedia. Investopedia is not necessarily a comparison platform like some of the other ones on the list, but I think it's a good first step. And so I wanted to include it because Investopedia seems to push knowledge more so than the other platforms. A lot of the other platforms, of course, are going to have sponsored placements. They're going to have ads. They're going to say, this is my top pick. They have a good APY, good customer service. I'm putting them here because I'm getting paid to. Investopedia is much more educational focused, in my opinion. And with that, they're here to teach you, to give you articles. So like if I had somebody who didn't know the difference between like a secured and unsecured credit card or doesn't know what FDIC insured means, I'd point them to Investopedia and I would say, let's start brushing up on some of this. And so if you're just kind of like getting your toes wet, you don't really know what's going on, Investopedia is the first place I'd push you so you can kind of educate yourself. It's very safe, in my opinion, because there's very conservative recommendations that prioritize capital preservation instead of heavy investing. And then there's no jargon. Everything is pretty straightforward, easy to explain, easy to understand, even for someone who doesn't know what's going on. So the cons obviously are it's not a power tool. It doesn't have advanced filtering. There's going to be a lot of articles. It's slow to navigate. You're going to have to wade through a lot of different items to find exactly what you're looking for. That's why they have this handy little search bar right here. But these are the platforms that I think when you use them as a stack, you're going to be able to find out what online banking, online checking, what credit card comparisons, things like that. All of these are going to do a really good job of trying to get you into a spot to where you're ready to make a decision on where you want to park your cash. So now that we've talked about what makes a good platform and what makes a bad platform, let's talk very, very quickly on some of the things you need to look out for. So obviously the whole juxtaposition of this article is what are the best online tools to help you find a good bank to park your money in, to get a good APY, maybe to get a good credit card, stuff like that. NerdWallet, BestMoney, any of these will be able to do a side-by-side comparison. But what do we need to look out for? We need to look out for teaser rates. A teaser rate is basically when you see a rate that looks too good to be true, say maybe 6% and the market average right now is 4%. Well, there's obviously a catch. Typically that catch is going to be maybe at 6% on the first $1,000 you deposit, and then anything remaining after that is 0.5%. And so what you want to look for is a blended APY or check to make sure there's not like rate tiers for your deposit, because we don't want to fall into that trap. The other thing is active use requirements. I've got some credit unions here local that are offering like insane rates on like the first $25,000 you deposit. I mean, it's something like 7 to 8% APY. I mean, it's just sky high. But you have to have 2 deposits to the bank account every month, 2 auto deposits, typically like a payroll check, and then you need to swipe your debit card 15 times that month to be able to earn that interest. And then there's a couple other caveats and stuff like that. And if you're spending money just to get the interest, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because the bank's going to make their money on the debit card fees and they're going to pay you your interest, but you probably spent more than what you earn in interest typically. So be on the lookout for that. Don't fall into that active use requirement trap. And then the other thing is new money. So like if you have a checking account with Capital One, and I'm using Capital One as an example just because they're a big bank and people have savings accounts, money market, checking accounts, stuff like that. But if you have a checking account with Capital One and Capital One says, hey, we'll give you 6% on a $50,000 deposit into a Capital One savings account. You can't move your money from the checking account to the savings account. Capital One says, nah, that was already with us. That's not new money. And so you would have to move it from a different bank back to this bank or something of that nature. And it's just a whole rigmarole, and we don't want to do that. So I would use a platform like BestMoney or NerdWallet in order to see what people are saying about the different banks, their customer service, what their yields are, what they're rated out of 5, how easy it is to sign up, and then I would just call them and say, hey, I'd like to open an account, do an online application, put your account routing number in, send the money over. Just make sure it's a bank that you trust, like one of these big ones like American Express or SoFi. Like I said, stay away from those small banks. Say you're like, I've never heard of you. You may never see your money again. So just be on the lookout for that. Use some of these tools, use some of these platforms, and hopefully you'll be able to park your money in a place where it's hedged against inflation. Thanks, guys.